most people who falls in love first, the man or the woman, and they'll say the woman. It's not even close to true. A 2025 study across 33 countries found something most people don't expect. Men fell in love a full month earlier than women, and 30% of men said they felt love before the relationship was even official. Less than 20% of women said the same. So if you've ever wondered whether he's feeling it before you are, he probably is. But here's the part nobody talks about. What's actually happening inside a man's brain when he falls in love looks less like a feeling and more like a medical condition. Over the last 2 decades, neuroscientists have put people in love inside brain scanners. And what they found is that when a man falls in love, his brain goes through 3 distinct chemical phases. Each one looks eerily similar to a different condition. One resembles a drug addiction, one resembles a mental disorder. And the third? That one determines whether he stays or disappears. In 2005, biological anthropologist Helen Fisher put men and women who were madly in love inside a brain scanner and found that something different was happening in the male brain. When participants saw a photo of the person they loved, 2 regions exploded with activity: the ventral tegmental area, a tiny factory near the base of the brain that produces dopamine, and the caudate nucleus, wired for reward, motivation, and craving. These are the exact same regions that light up when someone takes a hit of cocaine. When neuroscientists Bartels and Zeki compared brain scans of people in love with scans of cocaine users, the overlap was massive. Romantic love isn't an emotion, it's a drive, like hunger, like thirst. His brain doesn't decide to fall in love any more than it decides to be hungry. It just fires. And for men, this firing happens fast. The initial trigger is heavily visual, and the dopamine response is immediate. That's why love at first sight isn't a fairy tale. It's a dopamine event. Sorry for the interruption, but if you're enjoying the video, consider subscribing to my channel. I'd like to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of June. So click that subscribe button. It's free and helps me out a lot. Now let's get back to the video. But the dopamine hit is just the beginning of what changes inside him. A 2004 study by Maraziti found that men who recently fell in love showed significantly lower testosterone levels than normal. Love was stripping away the hormone most associated with masculinity. Meanwhile, women in love showed the opposite. Their testosterone went up. His body isn't just feeling something, it's being rewritten. But dopamine and testosterone only explain the initial hit. They don't explain the obsession. That part comes from a completely different chemical. You know that phase early in a relationship where you cannot stop thinking about someone? You're at work, you're thinking about him. You're with friends, you're thinking about him. You wake up at 3 a.m., and the first thing in your head is his face. Most people chalk that up to excitement, or chemistry, or just really liking someone. It's none of those things. In 1999, Italian psychiatrist Donatella Maraziti at the University of Pisa ran an experiment that should have made global headlines. She took 3 groups of people. Group 1, 20 people who had fallen in love within the last 6 months. Group 2, 20 patients diagnosed with severe obsessive-compulsive disorder. Group 3, 20 normal controls. She measured something called serotonin transporter density in all 3 groups, one of the most reliable indicators of how the serotonin system is functioning. Serotonin is the chemical that regulates mood, calm, and, critically, intrusive repetitive thoughts. Here's what she found. The people in love and the people with OCD were chemically indistinguishable. Both groups showed serotonin levels roughly 40% lower than the normal controls. When a man falls in love, his brain enters a state that is biochemically identical to obsessive-compulsive disorder. That's why he can't stop thinking about you. It's not romance, it's not passion, it's a clinical obsession running on broken serotonin. And here's the kicker. Maraziti followed up with her subjects. That serotonin drop. It returned to normal within 12 to 18 months, every time, regardless of whether the couple stayed together or broke up. So stage 1 gets him high, stage 2 gets him hooked, but neither one is built to last. Which raises the real question. What makes a man actually stay? That answer starts with a rodent you've never heard of. Somewhere in the grasslands of the American Midwest, there's a small brown rodent called the prairie vole. Not much to look at. But this animal has taught scientists more about love than almost any human study ever has. Here's why. Prairie voles are one of the only mammals that mate for life. They share a nest. They raise their pups together. If a stranger vole approaches, the bonded male will physically attack it. Now their close cousin, the montane vole, looks almost identical. But montane voles mate with whoever's available and move on. No pair bonding, no attachment. So what's the difference? One molecule, vasopressin. Researchers at the National Institute of Mental Health found that prairie voles have significantly higher densities of vasopressin receptors in their brain's reward centers. Montane voles don't. When scientists blocked vasopressin in prairie voles, they stopped bonding with their mates entirely. And when they boosted vasopressin receptor expression in the promiscuous montane voles, those voles started behaving like monogamous partners. Same animal, different chemistry, completely different behavior. In human men, vasopressin works similarly. It surges during emotional closeness, shared experiences, vulnerability, time spent together. It's the chemical that takes a man from "I'm attracted to you" to "I don't want anyone else." Dopamine makes him want you. Vasopressin makes him choose you. But without that connection, real time, real presence, the vasopressin never builds up. And without vasopressin, the lock never clicks. So now you have the full chemical sequence. Dopamine hooks him, serotonin obsesses him, vasopressin locks him in. But none of this explains what happens next, because all three of these chemicals are on a timer. Remember that 12 to 18-month window from the Marizidi study? The one where serotonin snaps back to normal no matter what? That's not a glitch. That's the system working exactly as designed. The intense phase, the dopamine highs, the obsessive thoughts, the butterflies, were never meant to last. It's a recruitment tool. His brain floods itself with chemicals to get him bonded to someone. Once the bond is formed, it doesn't need the flood anymore, and we can see this on his brain scan. In 2011, researcher Bianca Acevedo and Helen Fisher's team scanned couples who had been married an average of 21 years and still reported being deeply in love. Same experiment. Photos of the partner versus photos of acquaintances. The dopamine-rich reward areas, still active. After 2 decades, seeing their partner's face still triggered the brain's pleasure system. But the regions associated with anxiety and obsession? Silent. The cocktail had shifted. Less dopamine chaos, more oxytocin, more vasopressin. The fire was still there, but the panic was gone. This is the part that breaks most relationships. Not because love ends, but because he doesn't recognize what love becomes. He feels the butterflies fade and thinks something is wrong. And here's the irony. A 2025 study in behavioral and brain sciences reviewed over 50 studies and found that men actually need this attachment phase more than women do. Men get more health benefits from a steady relationship. They're more emotionally dependent on their partner. And after a breakup, men are lonelier and recover slower. Yet this transition, from the dopamine phase to the attachment phase, is exactly where most men walk away. Because if he doesn't know it's coming, he'll mistake the calm for the end. Most men who leave don't leave because they stopped loving someone. They leave because they think the feeling they lost was love. It wasn't. It was dopamine. And dopamine always fades. The real thing is what's left when it does. So that's the science behind how men fall in love. Not a decision, not a slow build. A 3-act chemical sequence. Dopamine to hook, serotonin to obsess, vasopressin to lock in. Running on hardware that evolved long before we had a word for any of it. And the strangest part? Knowing all of this doesn't make you immune. Your brain will run the program anyway. But here's what none of this explains. Out of every woman he'll ever meet, why you? Why does his brain choose you? That answer is even stranger than the chemistry.